Let's set in a comfortable meditation posture and close the eyes. Put our attention on the silence that is always there deep in the mind. Connect with that deep inner silence. This is who you are. This is the silent witness. You are the silent witness. Now, established as the silent witness, please listen to the Yoga Vasishta. Book 5, Chapter 13, continuing with verse 6. Continue like Janaka in the willful discharge of your duties, and prosper by placing your intellectual sight on the divine light shining in your inner spirit. Of course, this is the silent witness, this divine light. It was by reflecting inwards that Janaka found the impermanence of the world. By placing his faith in the unchangeable spirit, in time he found its grace. Hence the pious acts of men, their riches and their friends are of no use for their salvation from the miseries of life. Only their own efforts are of use for the enlightenment of their soul. They who place their reliance upon faith in gods and depend upon them to fulfill their desires and future rewards are perverted in their understanding and cannot be heirs to immortality. He is saved from misery in this ocean of the world by reliance on his own reasoning and resignation, and by his spiritual vision of the Supreme Spirit, the silent witness. Attaining this blessed knowledge of intuition, which removes our ignorance, is what they call getting fruit fallen from heaven. The intelligence which looks into itself, as Janaka did, finds the soul developing of itself inside, just as the lotus bud opens of itself in the morning. The firm conviction of the material world melts into nothing under the light of perception, just as thick and hard ice dissolves to liquid under the sun's heat. The consciousness that this is I is like the shade of the night and is dispelled at the rise of the sun of intellect, when the omnipresent light appears vividly to sight. As soon as one loses his self-consciousness that this is me, the all-pervading soul opens fully to his view. We've been given very important instruction by the Shista in this verse, that in order to achieve connection with the silent witness, what we have to do is lose our own self-consciousness. And the way we lose this self-consciousness, that this is me, is simply by letting go. When we let go of the idea that I exist, it literally changes everything. The idea that I exist is the deepest, fundamental, first karmic trace at the bottom of the mountain ranges of karmic traces. This is the one we want to get to. If we can reach that karmic trace, a karmic trace that says, this is me, I exist, we've accomplished everything. As Janaka abandoned consciousness of his personality together with his desire, so you, O intelligent Ra, forsake them by your acute understanding and the discernment of your mind. After the cloud of egoism is dispersed and the sphere is cleared all around, the divine light will shine as brightly as a second sun. It is the greatest ignorance to think of one's own personality. When this thought is relaxed by the sense of our nothingness, we give room to the manifestation of holy light in the soul. Do not think of the entity or non-entity of yourself or others, but preserve the tranquility of your mind from thoughts of both positive and negative existences in order to get rid of your sense of distinction between producer and the produced. This is a very important statement. Do not think of the entity or non-entity of yourself or others. So how do we not think of something? That's probably the biggest of all challenges, isn't it? If I say do not think of elephants, what do you think about? Probably you think about elephants. The mind is structured in that way, always connecting thoughts with other thoughts, weaving this web of karmic traces, stretching back to time immemorial. So we can't force ourselves to not think. When Vasishtha says, do not think of the entity or non-entity of yourself or others, he is giving you the path to the goal. And to tread on this path, we must balance karmic traces. This is the road. The goal, the city we want to visit, is that place where I do not exist. To get there, we have to balance all the karmic traces in the way of that ultimate realization. Again, fostering a fondness for something as good and a hatred for others as bad is only a disease of your mind that serves only to make you uneasy. We may find that we cannot stop fostering a fondness for something good and a hatred for something that is bad. It seems natural for the mind to do that. But the tendency for that is arising only from karmic traces. In 21, Vasishtha says, do not be fond of what you think to be beautiful, or be disgusted of what appears hateful to you. So now he is explicitly talking about thoughts. And what we should do, how we should handle thoughts. Thoughts arise in the mind as a result of activity of karmic traces. When we're established in the silent witness, this is obvious. When the individual karmic traces produce a thought, we see it obviously as coming from individual karmic traces. When divine karmic traces produce a thought, we see it as obviously coming from divine karmic traces. We have to take this exercise in 2 steps, depending on our level of consciousness. When we see thoughts being inspired by individual karmic traces, it's easy to also see where those thoughts will lead. What will be the result of those thoughts, that thinking? And if we find that the result of those thoughts will not be in accord with the divine karmic traces, then we have to ignore those thoughts. But if we find that those thoughts are leading in the direction of synchronicity with divine karmic traces, then we have to follow those thoughts. So the rule that we ignore all thoughts drops away at some point when the awareness dawns that allows us to see where thoughts arise from and where they're going to end up. When we reach that level of connection with the silent witness, then we use our intellect to make a decision. Always moving in the direction of divine karmic traces, as long as we are here in service in this universe. When we complete our service in this universe, we will have arrived at Brahman consciousness. Then another rule begins to apply. But for now, this is the good guidance that we follow. Number one, establish yourself as the silent witness. Use that as an opportunity to observe your conscious thinking mind and the thoughts that are arising. Develop the discrimination of knowing the source of the thoughts. And then follow those thoughts that are moving in the direction of divine karmic traces, uplifting, supporting the entire universe. And ignore those that are moving opposed to it. Then your progress will be most rapid. They also view the desirable and detestable in the same light, are neither fond of one nor adverse to the other, until the fancy of the desirability of one thing and the dislike of the other is effaced from the mind. It is as hard to have the good grace of equanimity, just as it is difficult for moonlight to pierce a cloudy sky. Now, this fancy of the desirability of one thing and dislike of the other is caused by ownership of our thoughts, attachment to our thoughts. Once we lose attachment to our thoughts and we see them as basically expressions of karmic traces, frequencies, energies, then they take on a neutral quality. And when they take on this neutral quality, this allows us to live in equanimity, not being pulled one way or the other by various thoughts. That way we can simply, quickly decide, discern if a thought is moving in the direction of divine karmic trace synchronicity or not. And then we take appropriate action based on that decision. The mind that considers one thing to be appropriate and another as inappropriate is deprived of the blessing of detachment. Just as the sakota plant is despised because it has no flowers or fruit, where there is a craving for the desirable and an aversion to what is unseemly. And when there is a cry for gain and an outcry at one's loss, it is impossible for even-mindedness, dispassion, or tranquility to abide in the mind. So the key word here is this concept of craving. Craving for the desirable, aversion for the unseemly. Craving is the need to possess. We have to let go of that need to possess or need to push away. We're only dealing with frequency vibrations here. Of what value is it to possess a certain frequency vibration and avoid another one? Both are as illusory as the other. So we develop this quality of dispassion or tranquility, looking evenly on all karmic traces. The only judgment is, does this karmic trace inspire action that leads to synchronicity with divine karmic traces that is supporting and uplifting to the universe? Or does this thought lead to more separation from the universe and division? That's really the only judgment we can make. But we cannot make that judgment until we are established in the silent witness. We attempt to make that judgment on the level of the conscious thinking mind, it will be a mistake. Hence, when we begin the sadhana of dharana, the instruction is to ignore all thoughts that arise in the mind as expressions of the balancing of karmic traces. Because at that level, we're not established in the silent witness. But once we become established in the silent witness, then the rule changes. This is the clarity that we need. There being only the essence of one pure Brahman, diffused throughout the universe, it is very improper to take the one as many, and among them something as good or bad. Our desires and dislikes are the two apes living on the tree of our hearts. While they continue shaking and swinging that tree with their jogging and jolting, there can be no rest. Now we continue established as the silent witness and begin the Trimana Sanyama process on the esoteric Mahamantra to balance all karmic traces that have been touched on during the day's reading. Jai Gurudev.